Our guest commentators, Regional Student Minister Dr. Abdul Haleem Muhammad and Sister Deborah Muhammad of the NOI's Ministry of Education, will discuss the impact of COVID-19 and the recent Delta variant surge on the Black community. They will also discuss the vaccine mandate and will share their thoughts on the insight of the Center of Disease Control and Prevention's Eviction Moratorium ending. Before we get into the top news, let's do a recap of the current events we've recently covered. On I Have a Testimony, NMV news anchor Willie Muhammad's guest was student minister Aman Muhammad of Mosque 34 in Durham, North Carolina, who shared his experience and memories growing up and how reading the Holy Quran ignited his interest in Islam.
In the interview, you spoke about how your reading of the Quran ignited your interest in Islam. And, so how did you come about, who put the first Quran in your hand and how did it impact you?
Yes, well, at that time, it wasn't as many Black bookstores and things of that nature at that time. And so I used the library a lot for whatever I wanted to do and research. And so I would go back and forth, trying to get little dabs of wisdom here and there and whenever I could. And at the time when I was in the 12th grade in 1990, my girlfriend at that time, she was going to NC State in Raleigh, and she was studying as well. And she gifted me my first Holy Quran. And man, when I got it, when I got into that book, man, I couldn't put it down.
NMV news anchor Rosalind Parks sat down with weekly contributor Ryan E. Muhammad to discuss growing concerns over the effectiveness of the ANC, African National Congress, in governing South Africa, its internal power struggles, and the social unrest.
Has the ANC outlived its effectiveness and ability to govern South Africa?
I'll say this, the ANC came to power in 1994. And I just want to take this opportunity, of course, to correct a number. I said 24 years last week, but it's actually, they've been in power for 27 years now. Okay. And, they're the first democratically elected government. Before that, it was white settler minority rule who ruled strictly by white supremacy. And so when they came to power, the ANC came to power, they made many promises to the people, of how life would be better, how, it would be a better South Africa under our rule. And of course, everybody believed, nobody wanted to see the ANC fail.
Sister Mariam K. Muhammad, founder of Heal Thy Life Center, shared how her spiritual life coaching addresses the overall health conditions of women and girls through hands-on workshops, health seminars, lectures, and retreats.
Do you feel there's a lack or a void of this type of information or even this type of space for space like yours in today's society?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I feel like women are treated as if we're a new species to the planet. When it comes to our health, whether mental health, physical health, spiritual health, we're treated as if we're new. The time that it takes to learn how our bodies function is put to the sideline. If you look at the medical industry, we're not a priority. So when you go to the OB-GYN or you get a checkup and they're telling you, oh, you're okay, and you're describing your signs and symptoms and they're trying to tell you it's normal, but it's not normal. Or they're experimenting on us, or everything is always so extreme. I may be having pain in my reproductive system. Oh, she needs a hysterectomy. Like everything, the responses are always so extreme instead of taking the time to learn how our bodies work.
Poet, artist, social activist, and podcaster Anket Rumi graced us with her arts and her unique transcendental poetry of existence and social justice.
Yes. Can you give us a short overview of what you do and how you came into your purpose?
Yes, ma'am. I can give you a short overview. I love history, and I love our history in particular. And I study our history so much. And sometimes I just feel like there's something missing. Like I want to tell our stories in a way that's celebratory and not necessarily so sad. So I focus on people in our history who are traditionally celebrated, for instance, Harriet Tubman. But intricately, we don't really know Harriet. And so I tell our stories in a way that we get to celebrate the full being. It's not just like these little snippets of history that we get, from historical books, I guess, traditional historical books. But just doing like deep research, reading her autobiographies, reading anything written on her in that time when she was alive, and trying to convey just how amazing we are.
Weekly contributor Dr. Akili Muhammad gave us an update on the COVID-19 pandemic and the Delta variant that is surging in America and around the world.
What is the reason the number of infections is rising again?
I think that's an excellent question. The first thing that I will say is that, the media continues to push that it's unvaccinated people that are causing the surge. But I think just one simple question can put that to rest, and that is, what did the unvaccinated people have to do with this pandemic starting from the beginning? So that to me is a very worthless statement that a lot of people are making, because viruses are very unpredictable. And as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in the criterion, July 4th, 2020, they will not be able to stop this. It has mutations that are happening faster than they can keep up with. Right. And so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the reality that the minister has given us a path to look at by his statements that he made July 4th, 2020, and we're watching that reality come into fruition.
Sister Cherie Muhammad, founder and director of Asiatic Minds online school, and Tiffany X, science instructor, share more about the Asiatic Minds curriculum and how it will provide knowledge that students need to learn to have a solid foundation in science.
Students enjoy learning, especially when it's delivered well. How will Asiatic Minds promote learning and make it an enjoyable experience for the students?
At Asiatic Minds, one thing I'm really excited about is we are going to have a school theme song. So that will be one of the things that we'll get our morning started with. After our prayer and recitation to the flag, we will open up with the theme song to get the children excited and ready about school. Also, to make education enjoyable, all of our teachers have excellent personalities. So they will bring their passion and personality to the table, which is something that engages students. When you're passionate and you show how much you care and that you're into a subject, that draws the children in, as well as the different online tools, Kahoot quizzes and different things like that will be used to help the children to engage into the subjects and have fun while doing it.
Kamal Bell of Sankofa Farms in North Carolina discusses how the farm is helping close the food availability gap in the community.
Oh, one of the things that I noticed is that there was a video that I saw where you were working to catch the queen. How long did it take for you to do that, and why is that necessary?
So that's a great question. Catching a queen is something that can take maybe 10 seconds, or it can take 10 minutes. So just based on where the bees are congregating, that gives me an idea where their brood chamber is. And brood are bees in their developing stages. So bees have a lot. They have 4 stages: they have the egg, larva, pupa, and adult. So the brood chamber is all of those stages of bees on frames that are side by side. And typically in a healthy hive, it'll average around to be 4 or 5 frames, and sometimes 6 or 7, depending on what time of year we're in. So it's important to find the queen because she's laying the eggs, and her job is tasked with reproduction. So if you don't have a queen laying eggs, you don't have a productive colony.
NNV news anchor Willie Muhammad sat down with monthly contributors, Brother Lawrence Muhammad and attorney Gavin Richard, to discuss Imani Stanton and Jayla Jackson, who recently won Harvard University's debate competition, and their involvement in the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project.
Do you think these type of programs are effective, or are they just really symbolic and maybe just something that these white universities are doing to say, hey, we're helping underprivileged youth?
It's like what the brother was saying. It's a kind of a two-edged sword. It's a two-way street. I think that, yes, in some ways it does help some of our children for doing certain things and keeping them off of the streets. Not that every black child is on the streets or anything of that nature, because there are kids who are just interested in doing speech and debate. There are kids that are interested in things of that nature. However, I also look at it, yes, this is Harvard University. I have never heard, to my knowledge, Brother Willie, of an HBCU hosting a speech and debate or having a speech and debate club. I don't recall one when I was up at Southern University in Baton Rouge.
Lawrence Muhammad and Gavin Richard shared their thoughts about NFL Hall of Famer and head coach of Jackson State University, Deion Sanders, walking off of a media day interview after a reporter failed to put some respect on his name.
What are your thoughts about him even becoming the head coach at Jackson State University and the excitement that it has caused?
I would say the tide is turning. So what I mean by that is to have someone of the stature of Deion Sanders to come back to an HBCU or a black university, to come and to bring that prestige and to bring that clout and to bring that fame with him, that shows a great deal of the potential that we have. So if you notice, a lot of these players, they come from places like these small universities, black universities, but they don't necessarily get the recognition that they should. And so by Deion Sanders coming back to Jackson State University, he not only brings himself, but he brings the eyes of the world to an HBCU. And so now we get to see the greatness of our people as a whole.
Let us pause for announcements from our sponsors. Coming up, our guests will talk about COVID-19, Delta variant, and the impact it is having on the Black community. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people, and upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
As the Delta variant poses a serious threat, there are concerns as to how this new strand might impact the world, especially Black and Brown communities. Joining us to discuss this is Regional Student Minister Dr. Abdul Haleem Muhammad and Sister Deborah Muhammad of the NOI's Ministry of Education. How are you all doing?
Fine, thank you.
Great. I'm excited to get into this. So let's just jump. Dr. Haleem, with the Delta variant posing a serious threat, how can we expect this new strand to impact our community? Specifically, after witnessing the medical neglect that the Black community faced last year during the first wave?
Well, that is exactly the problem. The problem is the lack of diversity in the medical field, particularly in this administration, and the lack of equitable treatment in terms of there are two medical systems, one for the rich and Caucasians, and the other for the poor and people of color and even Caucasians. So the real problem is the comorbidity. See, they're often reporting, well, this amount of people died from the virus, but they very rarely talk about what were the comorbidities. How many of those people were obese? How many of those people lacked vitamin D? How many of those people had suffered from diabetes or cardiovascular problems? We need more information. You know, when I was in grad school, there was a saying, there are lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics. And so we must peel back the onion in order to better understand exactly what's going on and how this new variant will affect our community like the old variant did.
Right. And now that we have this information and we know that there are possibly comorbidities that affected us, how can we as a Black community arm ourselves against the Delta variant? And please, both of you comment.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and jump in. Well, one of the things that we can do is we can arm ourselves with information. And that's one of the things that affects us so profoundly, is that the lack of information, the lack of the knowledge. And so if we could start reading, and we in the Nation of Islam have a pamphlet that we will be putting out into the public about different protocols that we could, employ to be able to help boost our immune system so that our immune system won't be so suppressed that the virus can actually get into us and take a foothold. And so information and knowledge is, as they say, knowledge is power. But that's one of the critical things as Black people, that we must have the information that's necessary to be able to use so that we can protect ourselves and our bodies from this virus.
Right, yes. So I kind of want to take a different spin on this because last year, right, there was a lot of confusion and misinformation regarding whether or not children could be infected by the COVID-19 vaccine. And as we saw this play out last year during the school year, it was a mess. People went back to school, teachers were getting infected, schools were shutting down. So now we have Dr. Rick Bars, who is the Chief Clinical Officer at the Arkansas Children's Hospital, stated that we're seeing a real surge with the Delta variant, and we did not see this previously. This is the worst that we've seen it for kids. So what, Sister Deborah, and I'm leaning towards you as an educator, with this information, what can families expect moving into the school year?
Of course, like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has already warned us, that this is a very unusual virus, and it's going to continue to have variants. So if we think that we could send our children back into school and that we are going to be okay, and that's not the case. In my home city, Baton Rouge, yesterday on the nightly news, I heard that they were inundated. Baton Rouge hospitals are inundated with COVID cases, but the thing about it is that the children now are becoming ill, being hospitalized from this virus. So the one thing that, for me personally, I suggest that parents start thinking, one, about keeping their children at home, trying to figure out ways that you can keep your children at home and, do distant learning. That would be preferable right now. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has not told us that we should go out yet. He told us we should stay in our chambers, and that still stands, so it hasn't changed. So we have to come together and figure out, if we can get some distant learning in our public schools, then we need to come together and figure out how we can educate our own children. That was the first fight of the Nation of Islam. And I would venture to say that might be the next fight that we have to have, is a fight to educate our own children. So that's one of the things that I would say, that in terms of this illness, it's affecting children, it's making them sick enough to be hospitalized. And so we have to start thinking about what we have to do to educate our children. So the statistics are good, but statistics are for the purpose of using them so that we can make plans and take actions for ourselves.
Dr. Haleem?
I love her answers, and I would like to take it from the standpoint of a city planner, urban planner. Turn of last century, we had over 15 million acres of agricultural land and over 1 million Black farmers. At the turn of this past century, or this century, we're down to 1 million acres of farmland, and we're down to 46,000 farmers, which tells me that we got our mouths in other people's kitchens. And that being the case, we have food deserts. And across the street here in Houston, across the street from every Walgreens is a CVS. And across from that is a fast food. We're living in food deserts. We are digging a grave with our teeth, as the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a few Savior's days ago, told us that how to live will be the law. And it should be the law, where we learn to use our food as our medicine. And unfortunately, that is not the case. And it goes down to our children. And notice that this variant, notice that in the beginning, everything that we were told in the beginning changes from time to time. Now you get these 2 shots, or you get this 1 shot, depending on which vendor you're using. And now you might need a booster. And now, even if you've taken the shot, now guess what? You got to wear a mask inside, because you could catch it and you could spread it. And remember, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us that words matter. So listen very carefully when people do talk about those side effects and even or deaths from taking the vaccine. They'll use words like rare. See, so all of this is going hand in hand. Not that it isn't serious, but we have been given a warning from the man of God, and now we're seeing the documentation backing up the revelation that we received on July 4th, 2020 in the Criterion speech by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Thank you. So now, with all this exposure, and we know how deadly it is, we know that we're lacking sufficiency in different vitamins in our foods. Now, Dr. Haleem, you are in Texas. Just recently, Texas Governor Greg Abbott bans the mask mandate and then threatens to fine local officials if they try to enforce it. What does this look like, and how could this affect us with this refusal?
Governor Abbott, along with Governor DeSantis in Florida, both have political aspirations of higher office, national office. This is about economics, and it's also about them having the ability, the constituency that they represent, to have the freedom to go out and to earn money. And there's a tie between economics and the school and child daycare. Without the school system being open and child daycare being open, it affects the economy because women make up so much of the workforce, but they cannot work if their children are not in school or there's not adequate daycare. So it's affecting the economics. So we must understand that. And then they want to make sure they open up the sport and play. Open up the sport and play so that they can distract us from the woes that we're suffering from this pestilence from heaven. So Governor Abbott has decided that what he's going to do is make sure that he hamstrings the local officials so that they can't do what's in the best interest of their people on the local level. I find it kind of hypocritical because Texas is one of those states that really talks about states' rights and was part of the Confederacy. And they talk about, the federal government shouldn't be telling us anything. And that's why we suffered from the freeze that we suffered from this past year, because we have decoupled ourselves from the national grid and had our own grid, which wasn't cared for. And because of that, 200 plus people died here in Texas. But again, it goes back to the mindset of the state of Texas, which once was its own republic. And Governor Abbott is trying to show his political bona fides and his independence chops so that he can attract that national audience because he has national aspirations.
Thank you. And Sister Deborah, being in Mississippi, and Mississippi was one of the first states to remove the mask mandate. What does this mean for you?
Well, interestingly enough, as it relates to education, each of the states have legislation regarding the exemption from vaccination. And the state of Mississippi is one out of 5 states in the union that does not have exemptions, religious or personal, that you can claim not to take the vaccine. So for me, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan stated, when he was saying that if we're forced to take this vaccine, that will be a declaration of war on us. And so what that means to me in the state of Mississippi is that if you do not believe in taking the vaccine and you have to send your children to school, both elementary, secondary, and post-secondary, because it also extends to the college level as well, then that puts us in a position where we have to do something for ourselves. So that's what that means to me being in the state of Mississippi. It's not just the masks. It's the not being able to be exempt from the vaccine if you want to send your children to school or if you're college students.
Thank you both. Now, let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we return, our guests will comment on vaccinations being mandated around the country. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
As concerns grow over vaccination mandates, there are already a list of companies and schools that are requiring students and employers to be vaccinated.
Yeah, this is not the only company that is having this conversation about whether or not to require their employees to get vaccinated if they are going to return in person. What we know right now is that Facebook is going to require their employees to get that shot before they can return to campuses here in the U.S. At this point, it's just here, but it could be expanded to other regions, according to Facebook's vice president of people. Her statement also mentions a process for people who cannot be vaccinated. Now, Google was the first tech giant to mandate vaccination, the company pushing back the in-person return date to October 8th as well, although the Google CEO wrote in a blog post that he is encouraged to see how many people are already vaccinated, employees included. Twitter is also requiring vaccines, but employees are not going to have to worry about that for a while because Twitter just announced it is closing the San Francisco office and the New York office. Once again, the company also told employees in May that they don't have to return in person ever if they don't want to. And according to industry site Deadline Hollywood, Netflix will require actors and production crews to be vaccinated, but the streaming giant has not clarified whether that will apply to non-production.
Okay, so we're going to bring back our guest and we're going to get into this topic. Welcome back. Okay, so with all the underlying preconditions that we discussed earlier that are affecting the world, especially the Black community, and these preconditions are what? Heart disease, diabetes, asthma, and cancer. We have never, ever witnessed the U.S. government works this hard to solve any of those problems. Why is there so much focus on this vaccination? Anybody?
Yeah. Well, the Honorable Minister of SUBCRIBE has been telling us for a very long time that there has been a plan by those who are in power to control the population of the world. And so the reason being is because this is part of this master plan, this scheme that this cabal of people have to control the population of the planet. And so that's why they're working so hard. That's the overall reason why they're working that hard. It's because they want to control the population of people that they consider to be useless eaters. And so that is one of the reasons among many.
Dr. Haleem?
Yeah, I have to ditto what Sister Deborah said. Unfortunately, there are people who see the carrying capacity of the earth not being able to support the population and its growth. So there are those who sit and discuss how they can either stop population growth or engage in depopulation. There are other solutions, such as the proper use of the resources that God has given us on this planet, and also the use of technology, the proper use of technology. But those who are set on depopulation have ideas of birth control, have ideas of us lining up and allowing people to stick needles in our arms. And the thing about it that I want people to think about is that this is an emergency vaccine. They've been working on it for 20 years, they say, and I'll take them at their word. But here's what I want us to consider. Consider the fact there hasn't been long-term studies as to the impact and effect of these vaccines on various segments of the population. You can watch any commercial during prime time, and you will see these medications that are put out by Big Pharma. And notice how they all have gone through all of the procedures to find out the long-term effects. And then at the end of the commercial, you'll hear the man or the woman talking real fast, or it will be in writing as to what the side effects of those things are that have gone through all of those protocols. We have yet to see all the protocols and to know the effect. And then we're not hearing all of the information from overseas either as the impact of these medications and vaccines on the population over there. Till all the facts are in, we're going to follow divine guidance from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And even when the facts are in, there are alternative methodologies, alternative treatments that we must explore and should be able to explore. And we shouldn't always be subject to Big Pharma and its money, its power to regulate the government through its donations and its lobbyists, or utilizing the media. Because in truth, every primetime show shows some kind of Big Pharma product on there, and he who pays the piper usually calls the tune.
Yes, sir. So on that line, I want to discuss this vaccination mandate that's on the horizon, because although many of us who've had to go to school or had to go to jobs, maybe we've had to take the tuberculosis or, different vaccines we've had to be required, but they were often other means that we can use to get out of taking this vaccine. But now there are already a list of companies and schools that are requiring students and employees to be vaccinated upon return. So simply put, Dr. Haleem, is this a violation of rights?
It is indeed. The Holy Quran says that, compulsion in religion is forbidden. I cannot make you by the sword except the God of the Holy Quran or the God of creation. I can't make you do that. There's no compulsion in religion. So if I can't make you accept God, your creator, the sustainer of your life, then who is government to enforce on me what I should put in the body that he gave me? I have free choice. And as long as I'll do the things, mask, social distance, cleanliness, and do the things that we're asked to do, then leave me alone. And if you don't want me to come to your job, then I'll have to do something for self. As our lessons tell us, we got to use modern technology. And this modern technology is the way that we may be able to feed, clothe, and shelter ourselves in spite of all of these mandates that try to dictate our lives to us.
Yes, sir. And Sister Deborah, now, do you believe that this vaccine mandate will ultimately force the Black and Brown communities to consider separation and self-sufficiency?
Well, that is a given. It's going to. Because think about the segment of the population that is not vaccinated. And more than likely, it's a concerted effort not to be vaccinated. And you're talking about upwards of a year and some months since the pandemic was declared. And so these people have already decided that I'm not taking the vaccine for whatever the reason is that they're not taking it. And so I doubt very seriously at this point in the game, they're going to change their mind, especially with the things that are coming out from the CDC whistleblowers about the vaccines having poison in them, about the deaths that are happening because of the vaccinations, about the breakthrough cases that are happening in spite of being fully vaccinated. I doubt if people will change their minds so quickly now. And so with that being the case, we will have to separate and do something for ourselves or suffer the consequences. So yes, absolutely, emphatically, yes, separation is already happening. And even if you want to say it's between the vaccinated and the non-vaccinated, I'm sure a lot of Black and Brown are on this, one side of this equation.
Yes, ma'am. So, Dr. Haleem, what should people be doing right now in preparation for this government's push of this mandatory vaccination?
Well, we should do what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us in the first place. Really, the government should be leading it, whereby it says in 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins and heal their land. There has to be an atonement. Now you say, oh man, is he saying we got to pray and then this thing gonna go away? No, but it sets the mindset of humility that you are not in charge. This variant keeps changing, it keeps mutating, and there are other social, economic, and political factors that are tying in that are causing chaos and further separation and the unraveling of this great nation and the connection it has to the so-called developed world. So if people would humble themselves and realize, in fact, that you're not really running this thing and ask for God's mercy, and then have that humility in your heart, then perhaps we could turn to each other instead of on each other. But right now, America's become an armed camp. One news report said that there was a shortage of ammunition because people are buying so many guns. What are they buying guns for? Are we expecting the Russians to invade, the Chinese to invade? Are we expecting Al Qaeda or someone or the Taliban to come from Afghanistan and come over here on canoes and attack us? We're getting ready to kill and shoot one another over things like mandatory mandates and things that they think that the government is going to oppress them. And unfortunately, I don't see a bright future unless we do turn to God and humble ourselves and do the things that we were told by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yes, sir. And Sister Deborah, if this continues, could parents possibly face prosecution if they refuse to vaccinate their children and send them to school?
Well, yes, ma'am. Of course, the possibility is there. But once again, going back to what I said before, is that it's knowing the rights. And so you have to know what your rights are. And you have to stand, if you will, your ground on your rights. And so the power is really with the people. So tyrants only exist because the people have not stood up. And so, yes, they may try to force us to vaccinate our children. However, we don't have to. We have the right. If we don't have rights over, maybe the land that we live on because of eminent domain, we have rights over our own person. And we have to fight for those rights and to our death. We cannot let anyone take those rights away from us at all costs, or take those rights away from our children. So yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you both. So let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. After the break, our contributors will share their thoughts on the CDC's eviction moratorium ending and what this means. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Classes begin September 1st. To enroll, visit AsiaticMinds.com.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline reads, "Separate and Be Saved. America's race problems and deadly race interactions are growing worse It is time we leave the children of our former slave masters and 400-year-old tormentors. Separation from whites is the only and best solution to this problem, a serious problem that is rooted in prophecy. This FCN volume number 41 edition middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is entitled A Case for Separation. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call Cover Report.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.
As the federal eviction moratorium has now expired as of July 31st, many Americans are facing eviction from their homes and the threat of homelessness.
Tonight, fear and anxiety in neighborhoods across the country.
I don't want to be on the street.
Yvonne Bryant lost her job in the pandemic and has been struggling ever since. She's among the more than 6 million Americans behind on their rent.
How far behind are you on your rent?
3 months. And this is always coming up in this boat.
There are a lot of people in trouble and a lot of people that need help.
Anthony Simpkins is the CEO of a nonprofit in Chicago that helps people stay in their homes, distributing some $2 million throughout the pandemic, but he says it's not enough.
Oh, it's definitely a potential crisis. The vast majority of these people are going to be low-income renters and are least likely to be able to sustain the shock of loss of income as a result of the pandemic.
The eviction moratorium ends tonight.
I'm like, I might be homeless at any day.
In a last-ditched effort, the White House urged Congress to extend the moratorium, but Democrats didn't have enough votes. They're now recessed for 6 weeks.
Welcome back, guests, Sister Deborah and Dr. Haleem. So, just a year after the initial start of the pandemic, where millions were furloughed and laid off, and many, by the way, have not yet recovered from this, will now potentially be facing evictions as a federal eviction moratorium has now expired as of July 31st. Dr. Haleem, what does this mean for Black people in America?
It is a crisis. We're already suffering disproportionately from homelessness. And at a recent community roundtable that we had here in Houston, the Justice of the Peace and also the constable who serves these evictions in our community both spoke at the roundtable. And they were deeply concerned that, in fact, Congress had not passed an extension of this moratorium. So now those vested interests, such as landlords, mortgage companies, and banks, are going to have their way. And she expected today and tomorrow and the next day, meaning the Justice of Peace, to see her courtroom or her virtual courtroom packed with these people being evicted from their homes. And as we saw our sister in the segment leading up to our part, she was there with her cane, and they talked about 82-year-old women. And the constable, he was very much touched by the fact that he said, man, what is it like putting a woman 25 years old with 7 children out on the street? He said, man, I don't want to see that. So this is what we're facing. And so it's going to lead to crime, it's going to lead to suicide, and it's going to lead to homelessness.
Yes, sir. And in your opinion, why would the Congress and Biden's administration fail to extend the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention's eviction moratorium? Because they didn't just find out yesterday or the day before, right? They knew for months that the expiration was coming.
Oh, I'm sorry. They said they didn't have enough votes. That's what the segment said. So that says to us that there is a wing within the Democratic Party that is more conservative, moderate to conservative, and they answer to bankers, they answer to real estate interests, they answer to those who have themselves suffered somewhat due to this moratorium. And so we see that they went home for 6 weeks to their homes, now they're going to see some of the constituents put out of theirs.
Right. And we know that it said that they didn't have enough votes, right? But why wait to the last minute to do this when you know that this is coming up? Sister Deborah, what is your opinion of this?
Well, it's part of the agenda, once again, to make us insecure. And this is all a part of their master plan, I believe, to depopulate, to destabilize the communities further. And this is just one more step that, they're taking to make you, insecure, to put you in a place where the food, clothing, and shelter are like human rights. They're like your basic human rights. And without shelter, then you're very insecure. You're left open, physically for health conditions to ensue. Even just the stress that you have to go under with not having a place to stay, but always deferring back to the program of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Dr. Haleem talked about it earlier, farmland and land in general. I believe that that is the solution that we as Black people have to start thinking about. Start thinking about getting our own land. It may be a little, it may not be so easy. It may be like the founding fathers or the founders of this country where they have to go out and take the land. But that's where we have to start. We have to go back to the land. And we have to begin to start building our own homes. They have things like tiny homes now. They have all different types of ways that we might be able to provide housing for our people. And so there's plenty of land all over the United States. We need to take advantage of it. We need to begin to buy land. And there are lots of people out there that are starting to do that. So we have to take care of ourselves, starting with our elders and with our children. We have to make sure that they're secure.
Yes, ma'am. So, yes, we definitely need to buy land, and we definitely need to provide housing for our people. And I find this interesting that just a few weeks ago, we got news and reports that people who are working minimum wage full time can't even afford to pay their rent, right? So are we now looking at an epidemic possibly of homelessness in the country, Dr. Haleem?
Absolutely. And conversely to that, Sister Krystina, is just this. Notice that how many restaurants and people who had minimum wage workers can't find work. There's some for higher signs out now. People are not willing to work for slave wages anymore. When profits and corporations are at an all-time high, where there is so much money awash in the stock market and in the blockchain and cryptocurrency, and there's money everywhere, but not for the working man and woman of this country, regardless of their creed or their color. And so we're seeing right now something is bubbling underneath the surface, and God's hand is on the water. He's troubling the waters right now. And if they want to have workers, they got to pay a living wage. You can't afford health care. You can't afford the roof over your head. You can't afford to send your children to school, to save money, to invest, and to do the things. In other words, somebody has climbed up the ladder to the middle class, to the upper class, and they pulled up the ladder because there happened to be no blue collar path to the middle class anymore as it was post World War II.
Yes, sir. And I'm happy that you mentioned this, right? Because you said something about children, and I wanted to shift this to Sister Deborah because now with the rise of homelessness, we know that this is causing a huge impact on children, right? Studies show that children who are living in unstable homes are more likely to fail within the educational system. So, how can educators and the educational system accommodate for this impending reality?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Because I could say that you do online education, right? But the issue is that you have to have connectivity in order to do online education. there could be other ways that we could look at trying to solve this problem, such as having educational forums where parents get together and they educate, similar to what the early pioneers did in the Nation of Islam. They would educate the children in their homes. So a group of parents would get together, and educate their children in their homes. So this may be a situation where we have to go back to where you have multiple families in a home. We may have to, like I said, begin to start educating our children in our homes. So that's a good question, and I'm not sure how that can be solved. But that's why, Allah placed us in the position that we're in. We have to think about, how do you educate the homeless?
Yes, ma'am. And thank you, Sister Deborah and Dr. Haleem, for joining us tonight for such an enlightening and necessary conversation. And we look forward to having you back on. Thank you. And thank you all, our listeners and viewers, for joining us today and tuning in to the National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us and comment in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Krystina Muhammad with the National Network View News. Have a good evening. Peace.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.